guys, I'm Sage Valentine and I'm back here to review another episode of AMC's The Walking Dead. This time it's all about Season 7, Episode number 11, entitled Hostiles and Calamities. So, Dwight is in deep doo-doo because Joey's dead, Daryl's missing, Dwight's room is a mess, and somebody helped Daryl escape. But the question in Dwight's mind is who? So, poor Eugene is now at the sanctuary and he is frightened to death. He is taken to a room that he thinks is like some sort of torture room or kill room, and come to find out the room is the exact bedroom that was to be given to Daryl if Daryl had decided to say that he was Negan. The character Laura, who in the comic books is one of my favorites, she is the person who takes Dwight to this room, Daryl's old room basically, and she calls him Haircut and says, "Welcome home, Haircut," and then tells him about the library that they have at the sanctuary, and then offers to get Eugene food. And Eugene asks about getting some lobster, and Laura's like, "What type of place do you think this is?" And I'm like, Eugene, who the heck would have lobster? But I guess it was worth a try. That conversation was funny, and in the end, Eugene ended up settling on eating pasta with orangey sauce. Dwight sees a note that was left in his room, and the handwriting is familiar, and that person who wrote that note was obviously Sherry. So I was right when I said that I believe that Sherry was the person that broke Daryl out of the sanctuary. And a lot of people were like, it was Dwight. I said no, because the sound of the footsteps sounded to me like high heels. Eugene pretty much has a fully loaded refrigerator with like eggs and vegetables and fruit and beer. And then Eugene, in that same scene, is like bobbing his head to Easy Street. And I'm just like, I should have known we were going to hear that song at least one more time in this series, in this season. Negan comes a-knocking at Dwight's door, and the next thing you know, Dwight is getting his butt kicked while Negan looks on with Lucille over his shoulder. Dwight ends up spending some time in that dark room, a place that he did not want to go back to, obviously, because it brings up bad memories of the time when he and Tina and Sherry escaped. And then, remember, Tina died, and he and Sherry ended up being basically threatened with death, and that's the reason why on the TV show, Sherry became a wife to save his life. So, Negan reminds Dwight of that same fact. And he tells Dwight that Sherry left, and it's a pretty big coincidence that she left right around the time that Daryl escaped. Somebody obviously helped Daryl escape, and obviously that was Sherry. So Dwight says it wasn't Sherry that helped Daryl. Yeah, it definitely was Sherry. Negan asks if Dwight is changing and starting to see things differently, and that is a nod to the comics, because if you read the comic book series, Dwight can't stand Negan at all, hates his guts. So like that change, that darkening of Dwight is like canon comic book Dwight coming to life, pretty much, because Dwight was kind of nasty in the comics. Yeah. So Negan says, you know, Daryl wasn't like you. Daryl was very emotional. So either Daryl is on his way home, back to Alexandria, or he's going to come back and try to kill us. Yeah, Negan's right about both things. And Negan tells Dwight to go out, get Sherry, and bring her back. And then he has Dr. Carson stitch up Dwight. Dr. Carson, being the shady person that he is like talking to Dwight, and he says, you know, Sherry has a big heart, she's soft, she's basically not the type of person that should be in this sanctuary, in the situation that she was in. Yeah, that's TV show Sherry. Now, if the writers decide to make TV show Sherry into comic book Sherry, that would be interesting. But if you read the comic books, she has no redeeming qualities at all. None. She basically is like Cersei Lannister in Game of Thrones. For those of you that don't watch Game of Thrones, pretty much Cersei knows what's going on, well, in the beginning, before she acquired all that power. She knew what was going on and didn't do anything about it. And that's pretty much Sherry in the comic books. And kind of sort of Sherry on the TV show as well. So Dr. Carson tells Dwight that, Dwight, you get it. And Sherry was a tender soul to marry Negan to save her husband's life. Again, that's not Sherry in the comics. No, she married Negan in the comics to get in where she fit in. It was all about her from the moment she met Negan. And we actually were able to see that in Here's Negan number 11 in the Image comic books. Not comic books, the Image, what's it called? The magazine. You know how they have the Here's Negan 4-page series that has been, I think, included in that Image Plus thingy since, I believe it was last summer. They're up to number 11, and pretty much we see that Sherry is all out for herself, and she goes after Negan on her own. There's no reason why she should have. Like, there was no gun to her head or anything like that. So Dwight leaves on a motorcycle to go find Sherry. Eugene gets a tour of the sanctuary. He learns all about the point system and where he fits in on this system. He's at the top with the wives and Dwight and Negan's special crew. So Laura basically tells Eugene, listen, you're a guest here. This is pretty much your home. If you want something, just take it. And Eugene had asked previously in the episode about getting pickles, and all of a sudden, Laura hands him this big jar of homemade pickles. So, Negan and Eugene chat. Poor Eugene meets Lucille, and Negan makes a point to point out that little nick in Lucille that was made by the bullet that Rosita shot that Eugene made. And Negan wants to know if Eugene is as smart as he says he is, and does he know things. So all of a sudden Eugene lies and says that he has a doctorate and he was a part of that Human Genome Project. We all remember that lie very well. And Negan basically needs Eugene's help to keep the walkers on their feet. And we are given like this shot of this walker, like the bottom half of the walker just falling off or like falling down. It was so disgusting. So Eugene mentions an idea that involves smelting, and immediately Eugene becomes an asset. And Negan says, Rick's loss is our, meaning his, and the Sanctuary's gain. So Negan sends Eugene a few wives, but he tells Eugene no sex. Not that Eugene was going to try to have sex with these women, because Eugene, seems a little bit too bashful for that. So pretty much Eugene is just going to hang out with these girls. Now, he meets 3 of the wives, because remember, I think there's about 5 or 6 of the wives, counting Sherry, but he meets 3 of them, Amber, Tanya, and Frankie. And he's sitting down playing video games, and Tanya and Frankie are watching. Meanwhile, Amber is just downing all this alcohol. And Eugene is just like, I'm aware that you girls are here and you don't want to be here, so I'm not going to try to do anything. And pretty much Tanya and Frankie are like, we want to be here. Amber, on the other hand, is still downing alcohol. So Eugene decides to show the wives this really cool experiment involving foam and some other thing he did with fire. And Tanya and Frankie laugh. Throughout their interactions with Eugene in the episode, like early on, I realized that those two were playing him. And I think that Eugene probably also realized something was up. So Dwight goes into this house that he stayed in with Sherry, and she was known as Honey then. So he calls out her name, Honey. And Sherry wrote him a note, and she basically talks about how Dwight has a bad memory, and that's when Dwight really realizes that, as he's reading this letter, that Sherry helped Daryl escape. And Sherry left because she didn't know what Dwight would do. And she blames herself for what Dwight became, because Dwight has basically become a killer. And she let go of Daryl because Daryl was what Dwight used to be. And being at the sanctuary isn't better than being dead. And she's sorry that she made Dwight into what he is. And Sherry left behind in Dwight's room, because it was inside of this like bass that was on the wall, and it was like a red and white cigarette package, and there were some cigarettes, some with her lipstick on it, and she left behind her engagement ring, her wedding band, and his wedding band in that pack. So Dwight left Sherry some pretzels and some beer, because she also mentioned pretzels and beer, and I think that's what he used to come home with before the apocalypse happened. So the wives come again to see Eugene, and they claim they need his help. Because Amber is basically an alcoholic after being Negan's wife, and all she does is cry, they explain that Amber had to sign up, which we also learned from Negan's mouth back in episode, I believe it was episode number 3, that Amber had to sign up to be a wife because her mom needed medication. But Frankie and Tanya did not have to sign up. They just wanted to become wives. And by sign up, I mean agree, not actually like sit there on a paper and write your name. So Amber thought that she could live with being a wife, but she can't do it. And the girls ask Eugene to help them. They need some sort of like pills or some sort of injection, something to help Amber take her own life, because she wants to go to sleep and she doesn't want to wake up again. So Eugene, one of them says, you can make something for her, and I'm just like, yeah, no, that's a really bad idea. This could be a setup. And all of a sudden, one of the girls, I believe it's Tanya, says, well, if you make pills, we need 2 of them. And I'm like, hold on, wait up. You just said you needed something for Amber to commit suicide. Now you want 2 pills? I'm like, something's not right. Not right at all. And Eugene is like, listen, if you guys could find out how much Amber weighs, then I can make something for you. Eugene cuts the line at the commissary. The lady does not realize what level Eugene is at, and she kind of talks to him like, listen, you need to get on the line. Like, do they not have this system where you come from? And Eugene walks away. Then he turns around and he was like, what's your number? And she's looking at him like, number? And he was like, well, mine is number 16. I report to Negan, blase, blase, blah. He was like, I know that you basically report to me. So in other words, give me this stuff. And the lady's like, well, I didn't know. So Eugene takes the cold pills that he was asking for, and he takes a fly swatter. He takes a bedpan. He takes this weird frog stuffed animal that he called a Grimbly Gunk, which on a side note, I watched Talking Dead like for maybe a couple minutes, and we learned that there was no name for that weird little what you call it, stuffed animal. Like, they just came up with the name Grimbly Gunk. And then Eugene takes the whole basket of cold pills and he leaves. Dwight basically says to Dr. Carson that he killed Sherry, and I'm just like, no, he didn't. He didn't even know where Sherry was. As we saw in that scene when Dwight went to his old house, Sherry wasn't there. So clearly, Dwight is lying. So in another scene, we see Eugene and Laura being the latecomers to a meeting that Negan has set up in front of the oven. So we already know somebody's face is about to get burned up. And the person who's in trouble is Dr. Carson. And Negan's just like, listen, dude, you helped Sherry escape. All you have to do is just tell the truth. And I learned all this information from Dwight, and Dr. Carson's like, no, Dwight's lying, and Negan's like, hell no, Dwight is not lying, because he knows that if I find out, I'm going to burn the other side of his face and stick him in a hole. So, dude, tell me the truth, and I won't burn your face. So, all of a sudden, Dr. Carson basically tells him, like, you know, I did it, and he does it to save face, like literally save the side of his face that Negan was going to burn with that iron. And it seems like Negan's being reasonable for like a second, but I'm like, what is Negan about to do? Is he gonna hit him with iron? Is he gonna hit him with Lucille? Like, what's about to happen? And all of a sudden, Negan basically grabs Dr. Carson and pushes him face first into the oven. And, like, Dr. Carson is all burnt up. He's screaming and then he dies. I'm just like, damn. And if you watch the scene again, you'll see some of the people, including one of the wives, cringing and Amber crying. It was a very violent scene. That was actually worse than seeing Mark's face burn. So Negan's just like, oh, well, we've got a spare Dr. Carson. And all of a sudden, the camera kind of pans, if I remember correctly, to Eugene. And I'm like, Eugene's not a doctor? Like, Eugene is the world's biggest liar. But see, that's a part of Eugene's hustle. And a lot of people on social media are like, Negan's so stupid. Why would he kill the doctor? And I'm just like, you know, I think that Negan had been looking at the doctor a certain way and was coming for the doctor. And that whole situation with Sherry was the catalyst that he needed to come for the doctor. But I also think that Negan knows that Dwight is probably lying, but he's going to make Dwight live up to everything that Dwight told him about being a doctor and having a doctorate and all that other stuff. So, Tanya and Frankie come to Eugene because Eugene already made the pills and everything, and he tells the girls, like, he made the pills, but you girls can't have these pills. And they're looking at him like, what? You told us you were going to make these pills so that Amber could take them? And I'm just like, you ladies really thought that you were slick and that Eugene was stupid. Eugene is many things in the series and in the comic books, but he's no fool. He reveals that he knows that the pills were for Negan and not for Amber because the chicks asked for 2 pills instead of 1 pill. And they try to guilt trip him and they try to threaten him by saying, you know, we're going to tell Negan. And Eugene is like, you see what happened to Dr. Carson after Dwight lied? So I have nothing to worry about. Eugene pretty much tells the ladies, you can be replaced. And I was just like, wow. And some of the girls on Tumblr were like, that's so misogynistic. How are people cheering on what Eugene said? Because the girls thought that they were slick. They were trying to manipulate Eugene into making those pills so that Eugene would make them and then they would try to use them and the whole idea would fail and then they would blame it on Eugene. But the thing was, Eugene was aware of what was going on, and he basically told those ladies, listen, you can be replaced. I can't. And considering what happened to Dr. Carson when Dwight lied, all I would have to do is say something about you ladies, and then you could be replaced. See? They thought they were slick. They were not slick. And Tanya called Eugene a coward, and Eugene's just like, yeah, I am. But he's not stupid. When Negan comes to visit Eugene, Negan asks Eugene, how do you like the sanctuary in this room and everything? And it seems like Eugene likes it. And then Negan mentions that the girls spoke highly of him, and by him I mean Eugene, and I breathed a sigh of relief because I was like, what did these chicks say about Eugene? Because they could have said anything to get Eugene in trouble. Not that Negan wouldn't consider what they're saying before he reacted, but still, obviously they ended up speaking highly of Eugene. Eugene picks up quickly and basically tells Negan when he asked, listen, I'm Negan utterly and completely and stone cold from the moment that you showed up to Alexandria. I've been down. And a lot of people online were like, Eugene's so stupid. I can't believe he turned on the group. He didn't turn on the group. Eugene decided to go along with everything. I do think that he has a plan and he will eventually end up escaping. But for now, he doesn't want what happened to Daryl to happen to him, so he's just going to do what they want him to do. And at the end of the episode, we learn that Eugene is, or has taken on a supervisory position where he's trying to tell this guy who's in the same position that Daryl was that he needs to be careful with that melted metal or something like that because he's going to burn himself. And then all of a sudden, Dwight comes out. He basically asks Eugene, you know what, are you on board? And Eugene's just like, yeah, just like you. And we are Negan. The way I interpreted that final little, conversation was that Dwight was kind of telling Eugene, you know what, I got a plan. And he's just like, are you down? And Eugene's just like, yeah, I'm down. But they had to be careful because someone could be listening, so. Well, there you go. That's my review. I know that it's late. Sorry, guys, but this was the only time that I had to do this. And I do have a 24 Legacy review to do. And I do have an Emerald City review to do. And if all goes according to plan, and I get everything done as far as these reviews early, then I will have my Walking Dead review early. But until next time, you all take care and let me know what you thought of this episode. And I can't wait to watch tonight's episode. It's supposed to be a Raccoon-focused episode. I want to see how that comes to life. And I also want to see how this part of the story will relate to the rest. But I love you guys. Take care. Bye, guys. Bye.